There we go. All right, I'm Dale Carman. I started a company about 21 years ago called Real Effects. We're based in Dallas, Texas. Got about 300 plus awesome artists. If you're ever in Dallas, we made that guy. Super cool. We also have a movie in theaters right now, The Book of Life. So VR is something that's new to us as well, and I am super excited about it personally. I, like many of our other guys, got involved in the Kickstarter stage, and we were approached by Legendary and Oculus to create an experience for Pacific Rim. So I'm going to run through some of what we encountered in creating this, and as always, you know, we have to start with a concept. So we did some concept drawings. Unfortunately, we didn't get to actually build it to look quite that cool. And also, whenever they first came to us, the idea, you know, one of the things about VR is it definitely is the Wild West. And whenever they first came to us, the idea was, hey, we're going to give you some footage, and we want people to be able to experience it in VR for Comic-Con. Well, that just didn't work at all. And looking at footage for VR, and kind of probably the theme of a lot of what I want to talk about is designing for the medium. And we just felt like, you know, nothing made it feel like we wanted it to feel. So what we ended up doing was working with ILM to get all of the things from set and really rebuilding. And they gave us a lot of LiDAR scans and a lot of cool stuff that they used. And of course, you know, as they were creating visual effects for the movie, they didn't have to see it in 360 degrees. We got, you know, lots of nice plans and everything. But ultimately, we had to recreate everything to be optimized and work in VR. And there's really two pieces of VR that are the current available things. One is the DK2 that runs on a PC, and the other is the Samsung Gear VR mobile unit. We've got both of them outside, and a lot of you have already gotten to experience it. And the other thing that's really awesome about VR is just you have to experience it. It just does not do justice to look at it on a screen. And I'll talk about some of the technical challenges that we faced and some of the things that we ended up doing. We, as we developed this experience for Legendary and Oculus that ran at Comic-Con, we had a couple of really significant challenges. One was we didn't have very much time, so we had about 6 weeks to create this experience. The other was that the DK2, which is what they wanted this to run on, wasn't available yet. So we were creating it in theory that we would actually get a DK2 that would run. So we were racing against this finish line of Comic-Con, and then we also have the extra fun aspect that the platform that we were developing it on, Unreal Engine 4, was brand new. They didn't have drivers to support the DK2, so a lot of big challenges. Ultimately, and again, I'll show just a clip of this next piece because again, it doesn't do justice to see it.
Drivers engaged. Ion cannon charging. Neural handshake initiated. Greetings, Jaeger Pilot. Oculus Rift technology synchronizing. Combat simulation.
Hey, over here.
So, the number one thing that we've that we're focused on is to create a sense of presence. And again, I hope everyone gets a chance to experience it. But what we found is that you really have to design for the medium, and a lot of the things that the other guys have already pointed out of having a body and having the sense of where the eye is directing become super important. And we found that we really needed to give cues to the viewer, even if it was as silly as having them say this.
Combat simulation.
Hey, over here. Look at me. Take a moment to look around you and familiarize yourself with your surroundings.
So, you know, we had the challenge of having wanting the viewer to look a certain place, and sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution. So we just had had Charlie say, "Hey, look over here." We found that it was really effective. Some of the other things that we were facing, again, we were having to develop for this DK2 that we didn't have, and performance was key. We had to develop this to work at 75 frames per second.
Wow.
And it had to be a locked 75 frames per second because we wanted to use the new DK2 positional tracking. And if it varied at all, you would get hitches in the positional tracking, which would create this new term, simulation sickness. It just makes you feel funny. And so we worked really, really hard to really optimize the experience that we created, to create this holy grail of presence, to really teleport and transport people to really feel like they've gone someplace else. We had to do it with no DK2 until the very end of our development time. And Unreal, as I said, was new and didn't have established support for this. And we had to dramatically optimize our assets to work in real time. So how do you do that? Well, you use the real effects way. Okay, so you've got all these dots, you've got 4 straight lines, you've got to connect them, and you can't lift the pin. So this sort of sums up what we do and what we had to do on this project. So you've got the obvious 1, 2, 3, 4, and then, you know, sometimes Wall Street or even Hollywood will say, you know, I'll just buy another line. That's not an option because, you know, in VR, you know, really, my opinion is good enough isn't good enough. You know, we have to connect all the lines. We can't have it drop frames. You know, we've got to have it be this seamless experience. So what you have to do is 1, 2, 3, 4. And, you know, VR is definitely the Wild West, and there isn't a box. And so you have to do things and try things and be really different. And I guess one of the best parts was the end whenever Guillermo del Toro watched our experience and was delighted and said, "Wow, ILM did a really great job." So we were very happy with what we did, and one of the other fun stories at the end of all this was, you know, ran at Comic-Con, thousands of people went through it. It was really good. We got a call later from Samsung saying, "Hey, we saw it, we love it, and we want it for Gear VR." They're like, "Well, Unreal Engine doesn't work on Gear VR, and you know, how are we going to do that?" So we looked at different options, and there was no way that Unreal doesn't work on Android yet. It will eventually, but even if it did, you know, the power requirements, the frame rate, it wouldn't work well. And so we got together and came up with a way to basically take Unreal Engine and output a stereo rendered movie. Using techniques similar to how live action's approach, but where live action maybe uses 6 cameras, maybe uses 14 cameras, maybe uses 16 cameras. Because we were doing it digitally, we used 52 cameras and created what you guys can see outside on the Gear VR, which is a pretty cool stereo experience running at 60 frames per second on the Samsung Gear VR. And now we've also created an experience using what we learned for Pacific Rim to create an experience for our film, The Book of Life, that you can also see outside. So I went through this fast and made it short so we can have a little more time for Q&A if you guys have any questions.
Good enough is not good enough. I was very struck by that phrase, and it frankly brought to mind 3D and a situation where in Hollywood, frankly, I think they often very much did settle for just good enough, and that's why we've gotten mixed results. I know you get good enough is not good enough. Are the people you're talking to out there, the platforms, the studios, whatnot, do you think they get that?
Well, you know, in the case of Pacific Rim, whenever Legendary came to us, they came in Oculus. They came to us specifically because they wanted it to be better. They didn't want it to they didn't want the Pacific Rim, you know, franchise to be lessened by kind of something that didn't hold up.
It was ILM terrific, right?
Right.
You mentioned early on the different devices, and I was curious, is there significant differences between developing for the desktop solution and the mobile solution?
Yeah, there are a lot of differences, and there's some technical aspects that are probably worth sharing with everyone. The mobile unit currently, the shipping unit runs on the Note 4. The units we have out there are the S5, but essentially it's a mobile phone, and you've got dramatically less horsepower on that. So a lot of experiences on the mobile device are going to be playing back pre-rendered videos. So you've got a 360 experience, but not necessarily interactive. And a lot of the you can have interactivity in the terms of sort of the gaze-based UI and sort of triggering different things, but you can't have a really heavy 3D interactive experience on the mobile unit. You can have more sort of simplified, you know, game type things. And then the desktop units, which are going to be more for event-based things like Comic-Con, like CES, museums, theaters, you know, installation-based things. You know, you can have a higher end machine.
The Jaeger robot also spurred the thought for me, and I don't know if I saw this in any of the demos today. We're seeing amazing ability to maneuver in 3D environments, but if I'm that robot with these arms, I want to manipulate things with that environment. Is that doable?
Well, in the Pacific Rim experience, there was no interactivity besides head movement. We did give the viewer a body, which was very satisfying to a lot of people. A lot of people were like, "Hey, look at my abs," you know. And then we also had the guys use their arms. What was interesting was people parroted the movement. People mimicked the movement, even though they weren't actually doing it. We've since begun working with Kinect and with Leap motion controllers to actually add interactivity. We actually have it working on the Book of Life experience, but it's just, again, I took it off because it's not good enough. You know, there's some latency to it, and so it's not good enough. But it'll eventually be good enough so that, like, what happens in the Book of Life experience is you move your hands and your bone fingers move, and it's transportive, you know. And so eventually the latency will be better. That'll be fast enough so that.
You just mentioned the Leap motion controller. Is that the Google invested thing?
No, that Magic Leap is a different thing.
Sorry.
The Leap is a little, you know, $80 gesture-based
thing. And the reason Magic Leap has now become sort of the new, you know, flavor of the month in VR, but a very different kind of VR, where instead of creating an entire environment, you're sort of injecting into reality.
Right.
So I'm curious, are you already starting to think about, I'm sitting here dealing with Oculus, Samsung, and already the next completely different things coming along. How do you deal?
Well, you know, on one hand, it's all the same because we're storytellers telling stories, and you know, one of the things that's so satisfying about virtual reality is it is the ultimate way to tell a story. I get to really bring my viewer into my world. And so whatever, and then the other way that we approach it is that it's just another window. So I've been making stuff for the big screen, for the television screen, for now mobile devices, now VR headsets, and eventually augmented reality headsets. So it's just, it's still another way of how do I emotionally connect with audiences and take them places.
Great. Questions in the back?
An observation and a question. I think everyone who's been working on the things that are tied into movie tie-ins and things like that, they're dealing with marketing departments. They're dealing with, you know, when you get away from the studios that are trying to look at box office results, I think you get people that are a little bit more willing to think outside the box because they're thinking about, you know, hits, and they're thinking about comments, and they're thinking about it in a different way than the usual studio guys that were visual effects guys are used to dealing with. And then my question is, has anyone been working behind the scenes on like standardized formats so we avoid the whole, aging myself, VHS data, you know, type stuff where the really good thing winds up becoming the dinosaur due to the money of the inferior company?
Yeah, it is definitely the Wild West right now, and there's no standards. Because it's not solved yet. You know, on the live action side, it's just like it's not figured out yet. You know, the other side is that sort of all the digital technologies have stabilized a little bit, so that, you know, it doesn't matter as much. We can sort of whatever emerges, we can sort of go that way. But it is there's no standard and no really great way to handle any of it right now.
How difficult was it for you to downscale from the really high-end stuff down to the mobile devices? Or is it a complete do-over?
Yeah, well, the way that we approached it was to sort of bake it, to render it down. So it was tough because there again was no way to make a stereoscopic spherical movie out of Unreal Engine. We had to sort of invent a way to do that. And we're working on kind of ways to make that easier. But sir,
when I was so yours was the only demo outside that I got a chance to take a look at, and the one thing I felt like when I was in it, it felt like it was definitely directed to me, but I was almost like, it felt like I could have had somebody next to me also, just experiencing it. And I got the same sense with the boat one that we saw in the earlier example, that it seemed like fixed point, there could have been somebody behind me going through that Pirates of the Caribbean kind of ride. Is there communal experiences in this stuff yet, or is that too difficult just because you'd have to have multiple cameras know where they would be when somebody's actually sitting in that room in the space? Has that happened yet?
Yeah, there have been sort of developer experiments of communal experiences, and it basically just requires more headsets, more computers, a networked environment. And it is, I'll tell a really hopefully fast anecdotal experience of that. You know, the developer nerd community has created this, you know, theater thing, and so I went on there, you know, with my development kit. And I go into a room, and there's actually two guys in there with their avatars. And I've got an avatar, I picked some sort of lizard man or something, and I go into this room, and for some reason I couldn't get my microphone working. So they're talking to me, and I'm walking up to them with my game controller, and the guy says, "Can you hear me?" And I shake my head, and of course it's connected to my VR headset, you know, like, yes. And then he's saying, "Are you shaking your head because you hear me, or are you just shaking it randomly?" And I'm like, "No." But it was this very awkward, communal thing. It's pretty weird. But it will eventually, you know, that will mature too as it progresses. So
that is unfortunately all the question time we have. Thank you, Dale.
all right.